Surveillance is a cornerstone for many private investigation businesses today, and it is the main way most people get started in the PI profession. Whether it's uncovering infidelity, tracking down a missing person, or gathering evidence for legal proceedings and insurance claims, discreet observation is key. But surveillance is a delicate art that is fraught with potential pitfalls that can compromise the entire investigation. This video will go over 7 common ways private investigators, PIs, get burned during surveillance, as well as explore the specific risks involved, and I will offer practical tips to avoid these surveillance pitfalls. The first and most obvious one is parking too close to the subject location. Parking too close to the subject's residence is a big-time rookie mistake that screams, "I'm watching you," and immediately raises red flags for anyone paying attention. Now, I will be completely honest here, folks. I am guilty of making this major blunder myself. Early on in my career, I did a ton of surveillance, like 7 days a week. Day in and day out. Most of that surveillance was workers' comp cases, and insurance surveillance is most definitely a "what have you done for me lately" world. I was under a lot of pressure to get video of my subject, any video, even if it was only a few seconds as he walked from the house to his car. So I found that the easiest way to get that video was to sit right in front of the subject's residence, and I also found out that this is the easiest way by far to get burned while out there on surveillance. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Any observant subject, and most are pretty observant these days, or any nosy neighbor will notice your vehicle just sitting there. So what do you do to avoid making this mistake? First thing is to opt for any inconspicuous parking spots 1 to 3 blocks away from the target location. I often try to park between property lines so no one really knows what house I am parking in front of. Doing this makes one neighbor think I am visiting the other neighbor or someone across the street. I also try to park alongside long stretches of privacy fence. Now, this can be problematic too if no one is usually parked there, or if there are a lot of cars parked there. The primary goal when doing any stationary surveillance is to remain unnoticed and unmemorable. Direct contact with residents near the subject's home can be tempting and very dangerous too. You might need to confirm the subject lives there, or confirm he is home, or try to gather other intel for your case. Using a good guise to do these undercover types of contact can be quite helpful, but you need to make sure you avoid multiple interactions with the same neighbor or too much interaction with all of the subject's neighbors. This can quickly draw unwanted attention and arouse suspicion with the neighbors and with the subject if he sees you out there talking to everyone. The easiest way to overcome this blunder is to simply resist the urge for direct engagement unless absolutely necessary. I know some companies hire you and ask for those neighborhood canvases, and in those cases, well, you have to do them, but with a great deal of preparation and caution. Make sure you aren't asking questions that only pertain to one specific individual like your subject. I often will use a guise of looking at homes for sale or rent in the area, or one that works well is the lost puppy or lost kitty routine. With these, then you can make small talk and see what answers the neighbors give you through questions like, "Is this a quiet neighborhood? What are your neighbors like?" Be careful no matter what you are doing and try to avoid the unforeseen threat while out there on surveillance. The unforeseen threat is the nosy neighbor. Unfortunately, most neighborhoods have residents who are naturally observant and invested in their community's safety. These nosy neighbors might patrol the streets frequently, scrutinize unfamiliar vehicles, or even review doorbell camera footage. And in doing so, it is very easy for them to inadvertently expose your surveillance operation. Most neighborhoods today have some sort of neighborhood watch program in place, and the nosy neighbor will be happy to notify everyone, including your subject, about your presence. To avoid the nosy neighbor, you need to first off be aware of your surroundings and anticipate potential observers. Situational awareness is key to most phases of any surveillance and is vitally important while conducting stationary surveillance. Again, choose inconspicuous parking spots and make sure you are concealed properly. Make sure no one can see you inside your surveillance vehicle. When the nosy neighbor sees your vehicle, they may initially think it is a new car, but if they watch you for a bit and never see anything else suspicious, they will usually forget about you. However, if they can see you inside your car, well, the gig is up. They will start counter surveillance to see what you are doing. I like to use what I refer to as blackouts in my car when conducting surveillance. I have a sunscreen in my windshield. My preferred one has a black side, which I put facing out. I also use black foam core sheets that are cut out to fit in my side windows so no one can see inside. And I leave little cutouts in the corners so I can see and shoot video out of them. And I have a black cloth draped over a clothes hanger in my back seat so no one can see in from the rear. If necessary, I do this in the front seat too, so I don't have to put a sun shield up and I can watch out the front window. Then I am sitting quietly in my blackout box watching everything that is going on around me completely undetected. Now, while informing local law enforcement about your surveillance operation can be helpful for safety reasons, it is a double-edged sword. If neighbors report suspicious activity and the police already know about your presence, well, they may contact you and let you know. However, they may be obligated as well to answer the call, especially in smaller communities. I know many small towns around here where the police are required to answer every single call, no matter how trivial it is. So if a suspicious neighbor calls in, well, the cops may come rolling up behind you no matter what. And if you haven't called in, well, they will answer the call too, but in a much more cautious manner, which can create a confusing and uncomfortable situation. I always carefully weigh the pros and cons before contacting law enforcement. If I am working a rural case, I will almost always call into the sheriff's office and let them know where I am. Now, I don't give them all the details of my case. I just let them know I am out doing surveillance in the general area where I am. One problem is if the subject is related to or good friends with the deputies out there on patrol, he may get wind of your presence, so you have to consider this too. Now, if I am doing surveillance in the city and let's say I'm working a large apartment complex, I am probably not calling myself in. In these locations, there are so many vehicles parked all over and so much activity, it is usually pretty easy to just go undetected. The same also usually applies to large commercial or industrial areas, but I make that decision once I am on scene and able to evaluate the entire situation. In regular residential neighborhoods, I will usually call myself in just to be cautious. One caveat to this, though, is if I have intel that makes me believe the subject will be leaving shortly after I arrive. And if my subject doesn't leave as expected in these situations, I can call myself in later that morning. If you want to make sure you get burned while doing surveillance, just try following them too close while on mobile surveillance. Following a subject's vehicle too closely is a classic surveillance mistake, and it's often hard to avoid too. If you appear to be obviously aggressive, you are more likely to trigger the subject's suspicion. Once they get suspicious, they may very well confront you directly or even attempt evasive maneuvers or worse, start counter surveillance and try to follow you for a while. The biggest thing you need to do while on mobile surveillance is to first drive normally for the conditions and the traffic that you are in. I try to maintain a safe distance while blending in with the traffic flow. If it is heavy traffic, I can usually stay behind my subject, but maintain a normal following distance. If it is light traffic, I may try to put a car or two between us, but I also need to ensure I can maintain a visual of the subject's vehicle too. Of course, whenever possible, use multiple investigators with multiple vehicles. I know this isn't always possible, as it is expensive for the client, but for most domestic cases, we only take those now with multiple investigators, or we do only stationary surveillance. We have already talked about using blackouts in our windows, but we also need to cover the window tinting or lack thereof. You need to have some level of tinting on your side and rear windows. I always get the max the law allows. Now, keep in mind, each state has their own laws regarding this. Now, when I first got started, I paid a little extra and got a little darker tint. This, however, can create more problems. First is safety. It is difficult to see out of really dark windows, especially at night or even at dawn or dusk. It is also a challenge many times to shoot video out dark tinted windows too. But the biggest problem is that dark tinted windows, like limo tint, will draw attention to your vehicle. And no tinting makes it very easy for the subject and everyone else to not only see you, but identify you. If your subject sees your face as you sit in your car when they leave, then they see your face at the grocery store 2 miles away, well, the gig is most likely going to be up for that job. The easy solution is to just invest in high quality window tinting done by a professional. Don't try to do it yourself. I have never seen a good self-tinting job that didn't eventually fade, bubble, and, well, just plain look ugly after exposure to the elements. PIs get burned conducting surveillance most often while conducting foot surveillance. Following your subject on foot requires careful planning and execution. If the subject notices you are tailing them, they might confront you, jeopardizing the entire operation. You need to be careful of when and where you do foot surveillance. I never follow my subject into small places like convenience stores, barbershops, fast food joints, small office buildings, or other places where I would be more obviously noticed. I will follow the subject into grocery stores, big box stores, and shopping malls. But I want to ensure I blend in and I want to ensure I have my covert video camera with me too. Using a regular video camera or your cell phone to capture video can make you stand out like a sore thumb. Now, if you want more details about my preferred covert camera, then check out this video.